All right, let's bring in NJ Ayuk, Executive Chairman of the African Energy Chamber. He joins us from Luanda. A warm welcome to Al Jazeera. So Biden promised he would visit sub-Saharan Africa. He's left it to the last minute, hasn't he? What do you make of that?
I think sometimes we have to say better late than never. It would have been very good if he had come before, maybe last year. But I think him still coming to Angola, it shows one thing: Africa is important, Angola is important, and there is a big chance that it could really improve U.S. Africa relations that have seen a coal in the eyes of recent. And Angola has done some really good things to be a worthy recipient of the U.S. president's attention and to visit it at this time.
He set something of a trend as well. I mean, he's the first US president to travel to the region as a whole since 2015. Why do you think the region has been largely neglected by consecutive US presidents, though?
I mean, that is a big question for the Americans. I think they have not really seen, they felt they neglected Africa because they didn't really want to compete with China. And I think after the crisis in Ukraine, they just had to realize that Africa is more important and Angola is more important. We've seen the U.S. engage with the African countries to say, get more gas into Europe after the crisis started, but also working on security issues around the Gulf of Guinea and also looking at piracy in the eastern part of Africa. The U.S. has to engage more. The U.S. has to really work with Africans more, and that has not been what we have seen of recent. So this multi-billion-dollar investment in Angola is something that's the right direction, but Africans also have to do more to attract this. And that is why you see Angola, when they reform their government, they really put a lot of changes, they start to see that competition come in. So we also have some work to do on our side.
I wonder what you make of these competing influences that you've talked about. I mean, because in the meantime, since the last US president visited the region, there have been political, military and economic inroads, as you say, made by not only China, but Russia across the entire continent. This is the influences of old colonial powers like France wane in the Sahel region, for instance. How do countries like Angola view American power and influence within the context of Western influence in Africa?
I think Angola is one of the few countries in Africa that has really had a more balanced, multipolar way of engaging with all parties. You know, after independence, you had a strong Russian and Chinese presence. The biggest debtor is from China. But President Lorenzo made a choice and say, I'm going to reform. I'm going to get into markets. I'm going to do that. Then you saw oil companies come in. You see the Lobito refinery. But they have to find that healthy balance because they're moving away from colonial alliances that had always been there, and they're looking at whoever presents the biggest opportunity. And right now for Angola, the U.S. is just presenting that big billions of dollars going into that Lobito corridor. And Angola has met it with incentives, with reforms and all of that. And other African countries are going to copy the same because they need the dollars. They need to deal with energy poverty, and they need to work with those that are going to really meet their concerns. But we hope that the next U.S. president engage Africa even more and keeps this project going and really work with Africa and not wait to the last minute.
Well, I was going to ask you about the next U.S. president, the president-elect Donald Trump, because as well as, I suppose, waiting out and keeping your options open to see who offers the best opportunity, it's also waiting to see who is the least exploitative of countries willing to sink their money into certain African countries or extract resources, as we've most certainly seen colonial powers and indeed now Russia doing in certain parts of the country, certain parts of the continent, rather.
I think with President Trump, we don't know what to expect. He is a very interesting president that is coming in. But what we know is that we have a position where we want to see African minerals, resources processed in Africa, and we see the value chain within this continent. But also, if you look at countries like Angola, you look at countries like Libya, Nigeria, and these are what Trump would call drill baby drill countries, where energy, oil is of big importance for them. So they might see some kind of alliance on that, but also they also going to see some kind of alliance where there is a U.S. interest in competing with other forces, but the Africans would have to step in the game and really ask for more. But reforms are important. When you reform, there's payback. And I think we expect President Trump to be a great friend of Africa, but we need to meet him halfway.
Yeah, and it has to be clearly on Africa's terms as well. NJ, Ayuk, pleasure to speak to you.
Absolutely.
Great to have you on Al Jazeera.
Thank you so much. It's an honor.